Everybody, thanks for tuning in. So today I actually interviewed my friend Luke Faulconer. He's going to talk about how he went from a 9-to-5 job to being a freelancer to now owning his own business. He has some great actionable steps that, funny enough, starts with you having a full-time job. And when you work 9 to 5, use 5 to 9 to actually build up your side hustle or your passion, what's going to be your job in the future. So in this episode, he talks about how to actually multiply your efforts, how to free up some more time by using virtual assistants. So I think you're going to have a lot of fun listening to all of his experience and tons of actionable tips that he gives. So without further ado, let's hop on in.
So it's recording, by the way. Now you can't sue me. I told you. That's the thing. There's like a shit that pops up. It's like, be sure to tell people that you're recording them to avoid legal issues.
It says that you're on Skype.
Yeah, it says it right when you start recording. Yeah.
That's pretty funny, man.
So let's go with freelancer to agency. Cool.
Yeah, and I think it's cool. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we've both kind of done our own thing even since college and out of college, right? Like you've never really worked a 9 to 5?
Dude, so I worked one 9 to 5, I guess actually 2 9 to 5s. So right out of college.
Right out of college? Okay.
Yeah, first job was an outside sales position. So I was working for like a different company, right? Going business to business. And then after that job, actually I got a position at a medical marijuana company.
Oh,
doing marketing for them as well. Yeah, I was at the corporate actually of this medical marijuana company, which was pretty nuts. But then after that, left and haven't gone back since, dude. So I guess a year after college, but then also during college, I was running companies.
So just a year out of college, you worked 9 to 5. Yeah. So I think people like appeal to that for sure. Like how you don't have to start a company when you're 30 or 40, and you can just do it right away. So
yeah. So we'll touch on that. So let's hop on into it. Basically, I mean, dude. So how'd you get into marketing? Right. It sounds like even in college or right after college, you were already somewhat freelancer. So tell me, how'd you get into it?
Yeah, in college, my first gig was I guess sales and marketing director for like my college town for a startup company called Hooked. We were they still are a restaurant deals app essentially, kind of based on geolocation, stuff like that. It's in a lot of college towns actually. I think they're in probably 50 plus right now, but
yeah, we had it also actually.
Did you have it? Yeah. So my friend told me about it he went to Michigan State, and I thought it was a super cool idea. I like companies that revolve around college towns. So actually reached out to the founders, didn't hear back for like 3 or 4 months, but like they reached out and they're like, hey, like we got your inquiry. We think it's cool that you're passionate about what we're doing and you seem to be, pretty entrepreneurial. We'd like to actually expand to the SEC. So I went to school at Ole Miss, and they kind of just extended the job. They said this will be, kind of a test for that market, but they put a lot of trust in me, I guess, more so than I even trusted myself at that age. So it was cool. Yeah, it was going restaurant to restaurant, doing the sales, getting them on board, but then also doing all the marketing. So going out to the college and growing a user base, which was awesome experience. After that, I worked for right out of college.
Well, let's pause there for a hot second, actually. So pretty sick. I mean, you said you reached out to the founders, right?
Yeah.
How'd you find them? And also just how'd you reach out? Because I think that's sort of a barrier that people are afraid of, honestly, right? Is just cold outreach in general.
Yeah. I think it was as simple as like submitting a message on their contact form on their website. I may have gone a little bit deeper and found their LinkedIns and emails and stuff like that. I was pretty persistent about it, which I think helped. It showed that I was passionate about what they were doing and that I wanted to get involved. And after that, it opened up my eyes to like a lot of my friends when they're job searching, I know they'll just go to like Indeed.com or ZipRecruiter or whatever it may be, and just apply for jobs that are open at that moment. And I always tell them, like, be different. Find a company that you want to work for first, and then pursue them. if they know that you're interested and that you can add value, they'll make a job for you. So I would always advise people to do that versus just apply, interview, you know?
Yep. So it reminds me of a story actually that my dad told me about. One of his friends, you know, they were in their 40s, right? And the guy had been at this job for so long, and he was just so fed up with it and like pissed off that for some reason he decided he's basically storming out. I don't know if maybe he was even just going to lunch, but went literally next door to the other business, strolled in there, ended up talking to either the head manager or the owner, and bada bing, bada boom, literally got a job right then and there. And it was his dream job, essentially.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's you'd be surprised what you can accomplish by just getting out of your comfort zone and pursuing opportunities like that. So
seriously, right? And I mean, and you even said it yourself that you were outside of your comfort zone essentially because they put more trust in you, right? The guys at Hooked put more trust in you than you almost even had it yourself. I mean, what year was this at school?
Yeah, I was beginning of my sophomore year. So I was actually the first market manager they hired that was actually a college student at that time. Everybody else was post-grad, even in their 30s. So they liked the idea of having somebody that was a student there because they could engage with the student body a little bit better, I guess. And I guess they just saw that I was hungry, and that was the big thing. So worked out well, did that for just over a year, but grew. I think we got over 50% of the student body on the app. Got dozens of restaurants. So it was a good market. And before that, I was kind of a little bit shyer, I guess. But me going restaurant to restaurant and selling, and I would have to train their staff. It really got me out of my my comfort zone, and it made me not as shy. So that was huge for me.
Yeah, man. So I told you right before we started recording on the call that my first job out of college was doing business to business sales. It's what I call cold canvassing, which they just gave me a zip code. I just walked in to every single business, and never in my wildest dreams would I imagine that you could walk into somebody else's business and sell them something instead of them selling you something.
Yep. Yeah.
That's right. So you just got to get out of your comfort zone and crazy shit will happen. So that was sort of your start into marketing, right?
It was, yeah. I mean, in high school and stuff, I've always been pretty entrepreneurial, ever since I read a few books that really resonate with me. But they were all, throw up a website, try and start a business, and I would get tired of it after a few months. Nothing real. So this is my first real experience where I actually felt like I was growing something of value, I guess.
Nice, man. That's awesome. And so it's funny. So our overarching theme sort of for today's episode, right, is going from freelancer to really, we'll call it just business owner, right? A lot of times it's an agency. But so that's sort of kind of low key. I mean, you're an employee, but almost like a freelancer. It sounds like it's so many responsibilities, right? That you were truly freelancer, almost starting up your own division there, which is awesome. So where'd you go after that?
Yeah, after that, very similar thing in terms of how I acquired a job or landed myself on a team of another startup. It hit my news feed one day. There's this company, I think they were featured in Forbes or something. This new startup is a travel startup. I love travel and the idea of traveling the world. And there's this app called Cape, built by a guy out of the Philippines. And it was kind of in idea phase, but the idea was kind of last minute flights and allowing people to travel the world for pennies on the dollar. So again, I reached out to the founder once I read that article. We hopped on a call like this, a video call, and he could just tell I really liked what he was doing. He was actually just looking to grow a team. He needed a CMO for his team. So and at first it was pure equity, which was fine by me. I was super young and just really hungry. So we were the first two, I guess, and then eventually grew to about 10 people. But just being a lean startup, I mean, was an amazing experience. We ended up partnering with like Air France. Essentially, we were a software that would sell last minute flights, so excess inventory that these airlines had. So partnered with Air France, did a lot of cool things with them, traveled to New York to meet their team a few times. It was the typical startup story where it ended up crashing and burning pretty hard.
Nice.
But it was cool. It was cool. Yeah, we went to TechCrunch Disrupt and did some really cool stuff. So it was an amazing experience. I knew through that experience, though, that I didn't want to have some big tech company where I'm raising a bunch of venture capital, because it almost felt like you're working for the investors that are lending you that money. So it could be stressful at times, and I was more into the idea of starting a lean business from scratch that was profitable right away. So I actually moved out to Denver for that startup, and once
really?
Yeah. So our investors were out here. We went through an accelerator program out here. So it was a blessing for that, because as I'm sure you do, I love Denver. It's an amazing city, so it brought me out for that. After that, I got into real estate, which is something I've always wanted to get into. Worked for a couple investors, and it was super cool. I was able to work from home, so didn't have to put in a ton of hours, and I was always working on kind of my own stuff on the side. And then it wasn't until the beginning of this year that I just went all in on my own stuff. So like I said before, I've always been entrepreneurial, starting businesses, but I was never all in. I always had some breathing room because I had some income coming in from being an employee or doing contract work, stuff like that. But I guess I was able to have some peace of mind. I built up a good amount of savings to where I knew that worst case, I can always go out and get another job like I've done before. But yeah, so it's been my first year in business. Started a lead generation company in the real estate space that stemmed from working, for those investors, getting a lot of experience that way. So yeah, do lead generation for realtors, other investors, stuff like that, and it's been really amazing.
Going good, nice. Lead gen for realtors and other real estate. What's the company called for everybody?
Yeah, Peak Leads. Peak
Leads.
Mountains. Yeah, I needed. I love the mountains. Again, I love Colorado, so I needed something tying the mountains into the name.
Nice. Love it. So before getting into that, I mean, one thing that I just noted here was pretty interesting, that with the travel startup Cape, right? You said that you came on as an equity partner. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
What are your feelings as far as, going the equity route? Sorry, what are your feelings as far as, going the equity route instead of getting paid up front? Because I think a lot of people, especially when they're starting as freelancers or just small business owners in general, they get these opportunities to work with startups, right? I know I've had so many of them. A lot of times equity never turns into money at all.
Sure.
So what's your opinion?
Yeah, and in this case, it did not. So at that point, I was living at home, like just after college with my parents. My expenses were super low. No rent, no lease, my mom cooked me food all the time. So I was living pretty lean, just like the startup was. So I was okay with equity. I kind of looked at it as getting my MBA almost. I never really had a desire to go into like grad school or MBA, and never been a huge fan of like school in general, I guess. So
formal education.
Yeah, formal education. So I knew at the very least this would be an opportunity to like really excel myself, just knowledge wise and experience wise. So I did it for that. Once we actually raised money, I got a salary, so that was nice and allowed me to move out to Denver. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, for somebody to go all in, not getting paid in the beginning, just banking on the fact that your equity is going to pan out to be something, can be scary for sure. I don't know that I would recommend it to anybody, but if they're doing it for the right reason, not just expecting that equity to turn into millions of dollars, but they're looking at it as a great experience and education, then I think it's worth it for that reason.
Love it. Yeah. And you're saying, right, the right reasons in your case being education, right?
Yeah.
Not formal education, not an actual MBA or post-grad certificate, but shit, I mean, in my personal opinion, way more valuable, worth way more, the actual experience and sort of learning on the job as you go than a post-grad. I mean, I didn't go to a post-grad either. I didn't go get my MBA. So I can't say, but hey, that was the right reason for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, as the CMO, we were doing, in the beginning at least, every marketing strategy under the sun. So from brand ambassador programs to influencer marketing that was my first experience with running Facebook ads, and I was managing, 5-figure spend a month. So I was able to, learn how to run social ads and generate leads and grow a user base that way. And that, I took that experience and turned it into the business I have now. So
love it, man. So let's transition over to peak leads. But let's sort of start it. I'm curious, how did the transition happen from working for these real estate investors? Now you said you were working from home, but how did you transition from that to truly being out on your own? Because I think that's one of the biggest struggles that people have, right? It's sort of the fear or even just the ability to transition from a job all the way out to being solo.
Yeah, so I worked for an investor for about a year, and that was great because it allowed me to learn more about real estate itself and how to structure deals and how to acquire deals. Part of what I was doing was actually going out to properties in addition to the marketing and being on the sales side, so like acquiring properties. Nice. So I love that aspect and learned a lot there. But I knew that I needed that experience in real estate itself, actually running Facebook ads in real estate, doing lead gen in real estate to build up some leverage. If I were to just start a business from scratch without any leverage, I probably wouldn't have gone so well.
So when you're saying leverage, you saying just experience, talking testimonials, current clients?
Yeah, just results, just being able to show that, hey, I'm able to, turn this money, this ad spend into these results. And in the meantime, so I worked from home, which was nice. I didn't have to put in your typical 40 hours a week. So I was always working on my own projects, in my after hours. So by doing so, I was able to obtain a couple of clients, and they actually started just very, very small pay. I think some were even a couple free trials, to just kind of, again, get those testimonials, get those results, get that experience. And once I had those results, and again, I had enough savings to where I was like, I have a runway for at least a little bit if I'm not to make a dime. And the job that I had at the time was starting to demand more and more hours. So I just knew that I didn't want to do that. So I went all in with it. At first, I was a true freelancer. I mean, going to local networking events, messaging everybody on Facebook that I could think of, hopping on calls, and just trying to do work for anybody I could at too low of a price, looking back at it now. But that allowed me to get into the game, start the business, and bring it to where it is now, just shy of a year later. So
yeah, dude, that's awesome, man. First off, congrats, right? Year into actually being an independent business owner is no small feat for sure, right? A lot of people, I think most people will never even try, much less be succeeding, right?
Yeah, and I think Tim Ferriss talks a lot about this. If you have an idea for a business or, just doing some freelance stuff, it makes a lot of sense to do it while you have a job, if you can. Work, if you have a 9-to-5, work from 5 to 9 on your project, on your idea, because you might learn when you're doing it from 5 to 9 that you hate it. And if that's the case, then you're probably not going to want to go all in on that business. So if you can slowly build it up while you have income coming in, it's going to help you for a lot of reasons. One being that I found just peace of mind, knowing that you can pay your bills, not having to go to networking events and have transactional conversations where like, oh, if I don't make this sale, I'm not going to be able to pay my rent. So I think starting a business while you have income coming in is great for a lot of reasons.
Nice, man. I like that a lot. That's something that I never actually did. Like, I didn't go the route of having a job and starting up the side hustle at the same time. But dude, it makes so much sense. And I think I totally agree with you. Like, that's what I would recommend to everybody. If people are starting to be fed up at their job or they're unhappy, right? Well, be grateful that you have a job, first off. Shit, there's hundreds of homeless people, so be grateful in the first place. And then use that to be able to springboard and do something that you like. Or
Sure.
like what you said, that you think you might like. Because who knows? Maybe you hate it, right?
Yeah, and if that job can relate to what your business idea is going to be, then even better. Like you said, it can springboard you. I can think of one gal that I know here in Denver that is starting her own tech startup. And, initially she's not going to be able to pay the bills with that. But what she's doing is working at a co-working space right now to pay the bills. And that allows her to get free workspace, to work on her business, to meet the right connections, stuff like that. I think it's just such a smart idea.
So she's employed by the co-working space?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's a good little hack right there.
Yeah. It's something that I've recommended to a few people. I think it's a great idea.
That's awesome. And so my brother Martin actually, right? So he's a designer. I actually told him when he first went freelance, I told him to start applying to jobs at what's called makers spaces, right? And so if people don't know, a maker space is essentially just like they have tons of different shop equipment like woodworking and metalworking stuff, and they have computers with all the design technology on it. And it's sort of the same type of idea as this girl that works at the co-working space, right? So that she can be in that environment for her own personal gains, right? Away from the business. Same as what I was telling Martin, is to go try and find a job at one of these maker spaces so that he can be in the environment, like getting paid to be in the environment that he already wants to be in as a freelancer.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys both kind of just dove right into it.
Yeah, we dove right into it. So,
world.
sorry, what'd you say?
Into the self-employment world, I was saying.
Into the self-employment world, yeah. So Martin was actually helping develop the entire design department and a lot of the processes at a clothing manufacturing company. And so he was making some of the designs for clothes, but he mostly was working with clients to come up with the appropriate designs, either put their graphics onto the patterns that the shop was actually like printing and then sewing all the clothes together. All the way into actually designing and developing brand new products. And so that they actually went out of business is what happened. They filed bankruptcy, and that's what left Martin without a job. When that happened, funny enough, it's kind of like you. I know the real estate investors, they didn't go out of business, but he had built up relationships already, and he was already sort of in the industry, and he already knew people, and that allowed him to immediately have clients. Right. So he immediately had clients. And so it wasn't even like a conscious decision for him. It was one day he had a job, the next day he didn't, but people still needed the work that he was doing for them. And so he kind of just kept doing it, just doing the same shit, but making more money, right? Making the full amount that they originally were paying the company that was paying him a salary.
That's super smart. Super smart.
Right? Yep. That's hilarious. Yeah. So just building up those relationships. So I'm curious, right? So you started talking, right, that right when you started, you were that true freelancer, right? You're going to the networking events, having those transactional conversations, and then it sort of shifted in your mind. What is the definition or the two definitions of freelancer to sort of business owner? What's that line? What are those definitions to you?
Yeah, I think a freelancer is essentially you have a skill set that you know you can monetize, but there's really no systems back behind it. You are just going out and hustling for that one client, that first client, those first few clients, and you're doing everything in the business. I mean, you're everything from the marketing to the sales to the finances to everything. And I know a lot of agency owners get in to the business because they want freedom. They want to be self-employed. They want to be a business owner. And then it turns out, if they probably reverse engineered the hours that they're putting in for the pay they're making, they're probably making minimum wage just for all the hours they're putting in. So that's what I think a freelancer is, where you're trying to do everything under the sun, to where your bandwidth is just spread so thin to where you really can't scale. A true business owner knows how to implement systems. They know how to outsource their weaknesses, and get to the point where they're outsourcing just about everything, to where they're just focusing on the business itself rather than, working in the business all day long.
And also, when you say outsourcing, that could obviously be employees as well, right?
Yeah, I think whether it's employees, I know virtual assistants is a super, super common strategy right now for good reason. But yeah, just knowing how to let go of parts of the business, whether it's because you don't like that part of the business, whether it's because you acknowledge that it's a weak point for you, just knowing how to let go. And that was tough for me. I mean, I guess I tend to be a perfectionist and want to control everything, but once you actually let go and you find the right people, then great things can happen for sure.
Yeah, man. Do you think there was a shift in your mentality, or maybe even what caused the shift, so that you could trust people, so that you could outsource and kind of let go? Did something specifically happen? Can you even think on that?
Yeah, I got to the point in my business when I would still consider myself a freelancer, where it's just like you kind of hit a wall, you hit that agency trap where you are doing absolutely everything, and you come to a point where you can't bring on any new clients because you're so busy with client fulfillment. But you hit enough clients to where that client fulfillment suffers as well. And as everybody knows in a marketing business, like, you're gonna have churn, clients are gonna leave, and then you're kind of stuck in the dust. So I knew that I needed to build systems that were like consistent, predictable. Still, you're going to have months that are up and down, but I like to have something that's a little bit more predictable, to where I don't have to feel like I need to go to a networking event and find a client there. So I guess the big shift was I got into, and I'll have to give a shout out to him, a guy's program. His name's Ravi Abuvala. And we became friends on Facebook, and I saw that he was crushing it. He's got multiple 7-figure businesses, and I saw that he was traveling around the world. I know to a lot of people that's appealing. It definitely appealed to me. And he was doing so just by implementing the right systems, learning how to outsource. So I actually hired him to help me with that. He trained me on his systems. He actually helped me find a couple of virtual assistants that work for me. And it's been an absolute game changer, just utilizing technology, softwares to automate parts of your business, and make sure that your pipeline's consistently full with opportunities, rather than feeling like you have to go out and constantly find those opportunities.
Nice, man. And so I think we've talked about Ravi before, just briefly, you and I. And so what made you, like I said, you saw him through ads, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
How you found him originally?
Just organic traffic too. He's posting lives all day. He's really good at content marketing for sure. Nice.
And so I guess, was it a combination of both? Like, you were seeing him repeatedly, like what he's doing is working, travel's attractive to you. And then also, were you just somewhat kind of maxed out on, you just didn't know what to do next? Like you said, like you had enough clients, but then all of a sudden the fulfillment was dropping in itself, the quality. Is that when you decided to, sort of seek outside help?
Yeah, I knew that I was hitting a point where I was working constantly, but my income, there was a ceiling on it, just because of the amount of time. There's not enough hours in the day for me to scale just by myself. So I knew that I needed to make a shift, and made a pretty sizable investment into the program, but it's been 100% worth it. One reason I love it is because there's a group with a bunch of other agency owners that are all implementing similar systems, and just the motivation there and the inspiration. I mean, seeing people closing big deals every day and scaling their business, just the mental component of it is really fantastic.
Dude, surrounding yourself with the right people is like such a big life hack. I think most people have heard the thing of like you're the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with, right? Yeah. But it's funny, I was having this conversation that, now in 2019 with, Facebook groups, podcasts and YouTube videos being so big that you can almost hack this, that you can specifically surround yourself with billionaires, right? By just constantly consuming their content and being in these groups of people that maybe you've never met them. Maybe you will never meet them, but it's almost hacking that thing of, now you are spending time with higher quality individuals.
Yeah, I consider a lot of people's podcasts that I listen to, a lot of books that I read, like almost like my mentors, but I'll probably never meet them. But that's the cool thing about living in the times that we do is not only should you surround yourself with the 5 people you want to be like the most, but I think that also plays into what you listen to on a daily basis, what you're reading, who you're interacting with on social media. I think it's the same concept.
Yeah, definitely. Have you ever tried to like sort of tailor your social media feed as far as either unfollowing certain accounts or specifically following people because, you're like, all right, well, if I'm going to be on social, I need to be getting more of this content?
Yeah, 100%. And the nice thing is, and I've been building up a, entrepreneurial network for quite some time. I think since I was, 16 or so on Facebook. Nice. With the algorithms these days, I mean, they know what you like, they know what you're interacting with. So when I hop on my social media, it's typically content I want to see, which is awesome.
Yeah, and content that's going to grow you as a person, right?
Absolutely.
Cool, man. And so one, it doesn't have to be the last thing to touch on here, but so you mentioned obviously outsourcing and virtual assistants, right? I think that's something that a lot of people have heard before, but if you can sort of speak on how'd you find your first virtual assistant, maybe how you vetted them, and how you work with them kind of maybe day to day, I think that'll help a lot of people, right? Because funny enough, I'll tell you, I was giving a presentation at a networking event last night. Then afterwards, we sort of went around and everybody spoke on their biggest struggle. And a lot of people's struggles, they were saying, there's not 48 hours in a single day.
Sure.
It was like, if somebody could sell me an hour of time, I'd pay $1,000 for it. They're just not effectively duplicating themselves. And virtual assistants is an amazing way to do it. So if you can just speak on your experience all the way from the start, I think that'd be hugely valuable.
Yeah, in terms of bringing on my first virtual assistant, so I did get into Robbie's program, and part of that was him going out and helping me find some and then interview them and then kind of train them on systems. So they came to me fully prepared and fully trained on how to generate leads for my business, how to prospect for my business. But I've since hired my own, and there's some great tools out there such as Upwork. Onlinejobs.ph is a job board in the Philippines. And it's funny, the company I worked with, Cape, the founder was from the Philippines, and I was not familiar with that culture at that time until I started working with dozens of them, and just fantastic people, an excellent culture, super hardworking people, super grateful people. So those are where my virtual assistants are from. And the work you can get out of them for such a low cost is incredible. It's
phenomenal,
incredible.
Honestly. It's staggering.
Yeah. So, went through some interview processes. I lucked out to find a great one the first time around. That's not always going to be the case. Sometimes you have to go through a few. The big part about it is knowing how to train them. So creating standard operating procedures, which is essentially just a checklist of how you get a job done. So anything you want to outsource, which for me, it was lead generation for my business, prospecting for my business. I no longer have to worry about where my next lead is coming from, where my next client's coming from. I do have problems in my business now that I'm addressing, and I'll probably hire virtual assistants for it, but it's because I have so many leads. So now I probably need to bring on a sales guy, somebody to follow up with a lead, stuff like that. But now I know that what I can do is create standard operating procedures on how I would do that task, and then I can hire somebody for it, train them on it, and then be confident that it's running smoothly. And if it's not, and I find that it's not running smoothly, you have those SOPs and you can find somebody else for that job. And that's really how you scale, along with using the right technology. So we're using really great technology to pull data, so emails, phone numbers, stuff like that, so we know who we're going after. We use Slack for communication. We use an awesome CRM called Go High Level, and some other stuff as well. But really utilizing the right tech and the right people is how I've found you can scale a business.
Love it, dude. So 2 things here that I want to touch on. I think people are going to get huge value from. 1, standard operating procedures, SOPs. It sounds like such an intense thing, but what you said, it's essentially just a checklist, right?
Yeah.
When you yourself go sit down to do work, right? Just start writing down simple things. Okay, first I have to do this. I have to log in to business.facebook.com. Now I'm going to check, okay, what is the amount of ad spend, my impressions, the cost per clicks? That's usually what I look at, whatever the metrics are you look at. And then I either duplicate an ad set or, I'm talking about Facebook ads here, but it could be anything as far as just communication with clients. Okay, I'm going to log into my CRM, see if there's been any messages about product complaints, whatever it is. Don't overthink SOPs, standard operating procedures. They're truly just checklists that you can give to somebody and they're going to replicate the process correctly. Right. Yeah,
absolutely. I know it sounds overwhelming. It sounds like something, a huge stack of papers you're going to receive at a corporate job or something. But it's quite simple. It's documenting how you do a task. So I recommend just creating a Google Doc and a checklist. You can drop it in something called Asana, which is a good, pretty much a to-do list, just keeping track of tasks. You can drop them, and then what I would do along with that checklist is record your computer screen and walk them through exactly how you do that task. I use Loom for that, Loom. It's a free tool. So not only can they see how you're doing a task, but you can narrate to your computer. So now you have something that is evergreen and lasts forever, and you can send whoever you're going to hire that document, that video. They study that for a few hours and boom, they know how to do that, and they'll be really good at it.
Love it, dude. I love that you brought up Loom, because I know you and I have talked about it before, and it's hilarious to hear that we've even used it in the same manner before we ever knew each other, before we ever knew we were in the same industry at all. But that's how I started my SOPs as well. Just while I was working during the day, when I would switch tasks, start a Loom video. And what Loom does is a simple screen recording, and it puts your face in a little bubble, and then you're just essentially just talking out what you're doing. And then that is an SOP right there. And in my opinion, it's even better than a checklist because they can physically see it in case, maybe there's a language barrier if you're going to the Philippines or outsourcing to India, then they can at least see where you're clicking and what you're doing instead of you just having to write it out and describe it. Right?
Yeah, Loom's an excellent tool. I have a training for realtors on how to run their own Facebook ads and do their own lead generation, and I recorded pretty much my entire training just using Loom. So free tool, it's excellent.
Yeah, seriously excellent. And then the last thing I want to touch on here is something else that you mentioned. You said that you were super fortunate that one of your first virtual assistants is one that, I don't know if you're still using him or, you just were super lucky. But you said sometimes you have to go through multiple, right? And I think a lot of people might be afraid of that, or they could find a difficulty in it. I guess you haven't gone through that many. I don't know if you have any tips or advice on it. I have a little bit of stuff myself, but sometimes you just have to try. Give them a project, see how it goes, and then don't be afraid to try out somebody else also.
Yeah, and I am using the same guy still, and have been for numerous months. I think a big part of it is conducting the interview well, asking the right questions. We interviewed probably about 5 folks, and one just stood out to me way more than the others, just based on how he answered questions. We were on video, so just based on how he conducted himself. One big thing, I could tell that he had an at-home setup. He's worked from home before. I could just tell by the environment he was in. So that was big for me. But just asking the right questions, such as, is there anything that would prevent you from being able to work every single day? What's your past experience? This guy worked in customer support for AT&T, Apple, big companies like that. So I knew if he could do work for them, what I'm doing is small peas compared to that. So super simple compared to that. But yeah, at times you will have to go through a few, and that should not prevent you from trying it, because after talking to an attorney, working with virtual assistants, they are not really even contractors. They're definitely not employees. You don't have to, file any forms for them. It's just a business expense. So you really have nothing to lose. If somebody pans out after a week, there are thousands and thousands of people looking for opportunities like this. And once you find somebody that's great, what I've done is, when I want to hire more virtual assistants, I go to my main guy and ask if he knows anybody looking for more work. And he usually has people on his network that are looking for more work. He's worked with them in the past. He can vouch for them. And what I'll actually have him do is train them. So he'll get promoted to another job. He'll become kind of a manager and train more people. And it's a really great system.
Yeah, and also I'll just tag on there that if you're sort of jaded by outsourcing work and being like, oh well, if you pay them so little, people get this idea of like the quality of work isn't going to be there, and I think it's so false, right? It's so false, man. I had a girl in Pakistan actually who I had found through Upwork, and oh my god, her quality of work surpassed any of my full-time employees, people that were getting paid almost double what she was getting paid. But the fact of the matter is, with the conversion rate, a lot of the time they're still getting paid more than any sort of average person, or even a similar job that's getting paid, locally, getting paid through us, because USD, the conversion rate is just so high. So quality is definitely there. Don't be afraid to try it. My biggest thing is get on a video interview with them, definitely, and make sure that their English, both written and spoken, is good enough that you can communicate, because there isn't proper communication, that's setting yourself up for failure.
No, those are some great tips. And yeah, the quality is most definitely there. And yeah, it's just different parts of the world. This money goes a long ways for them. I always make sure every time I make a sale that stems from, his initiatives, I'm kicking him a bonus. $50 here, a couple $100 here and there goes a long ways. Just the other day, I gave him a nice little bonus, and he was so grateful. He thanked me and said, "Oh, and I didn't know this. It's my daughter's birthday tomorrow. We can go buy her a really nice cake." And that makes you feel good. It makes you feel really good. And that $50 in your business, what else are you going to do with it? But when you can keep a guy loyal to you and grateful to you, then it goes a long ways.
Yeah, man. End of the day, what being a business owner is about is helping people, right? Yeah. Not just your clients, but your employees, your subcontractors, your virtual assistants also.
Yeah, and if you have the means to hire these folks for full-time, 40 hours a week, it's very inexpensive. I would recommend doing it just so they don't get up and leave one day because they have a better opportunity. If you're committed to them and all in on them, they're going to reciprocate for sure.
So you're saying instead of just contracting them like a couple hours here, a couple hours there, try and get them full-time so that they are committed.
Absolutely. Yep.
Nice. That's it. That's a huge tip. Cool. Luke, well, please, anything that you want to leave the listeners with, and of course, what the best way is to follow you on social, website, anything like that, time for you to drop your plug.
Yeah. I think we hit on some good stuff. Right now, the background on my phone, it's super cliche and just simple, but it's Just Do It by Nike. I mean, you just got to do it. Right now, I'm reading The Slight Edge, which is a great book, and it's just about doing the same things over and over each day, doing the right things, and just getting it done. So for anybody on the fence about diving into the entrepreneurship world, starting your own business, I would definitely advise it. We hit on some good tips though, as far as, if you have an income stream and you can do it from 5 to 9 at night, then try that first. See if you like it. Keep trying projects until you find what you like, and then you can go all in on it. That's about it. And then website, peakleadsllc.com is my business website. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. Need to be more active on there, but only so many hours in a day. Probably will hire a virtual assistant soon to do that for me. So
that is a great idea. Cool. So we dropped a lot of awesome tools, a lot of awesome resources. So we'll make sure to put everything in the description down below. And guys, please, if you related to anything we said, drop us a comment. If you have any ideas of yourselves and what can even improve on what we are talking about, drop us a comment. We'd love to hear from you guys. And the one ask that I always toss out there is, if you know of anybody who might get a little bit of value, share the episode. Anywhere and everywhere, greatly appreciated. So till then, thanks guys. Peace, Luke.
See you, Wayne. Thanks, man.
Nice. Easy as that, right?
Easy as that.